Are you ready to untangle from your past, recover from heartbreak, and revive your life? This is Soul CPR with your host, Ann Papayoti. We've all had soul-crushing experiences and lost ourselves in our pain, but there is a way out. On this podcast, Amazon best-selling author, award-winning life coach, and advice columnist Ann Papayoti helps us navigate the path from heartbreak to healing. So now, please welcome the host of Soul CPR, Ann Papayoti.
Welcome to today's show, everyone, and I'm happy you've joined me. This is the 9th episode, and the content covered so far has been pretty vast. And I've had listeners tell me that they feel like I'm speaking to them about them, and I even had one listener tell me that this has become their go-to sort of personal development hour every week. So they're learning about themselves as they heal from past relationships, and I'm very grateful that you're finding it meaningful and helpful. So let's keep going. Today, we're going to talk about the mind-body connection and how to use each one to heal the other. But first, let's take a few minutes to kind of recap from last week as I was asked a few questions offline. So last week, my co-author of The Gift of Shift, Tracy McDonald, joined me to talk about the power of beliefs and belief systems. So check it out if you haven't done so already. There's always so much more to say than we get to cover in our time on the show. But to sum it up, how I like to explain it is like this. Belief systems are deeply rooted in our culture, religion, society, our family upbringing, and our personal experiences and our observations sort of sprout individual beliefs about ourselves and may also challenge then or threaten parts of the systems. Does that make sense? And so this is when you may see someone raised in a church who then breaks away from it as their personal experience may have now created a belief that they now see the church as a business hierarchy created by man and that it's not their connection to God. And this may then create a separation from their family. So, in my conversation with Tracy, we focused more on beliefs about self, specifically limiting or negative beliefs and how those can be changed. And we like to call that the BS in our field, and how that BS gets stuck in our minds. And we discussed that all change begins with awareness and then conscious choice, and that the process of changing a belief begins with challenging it so that you can break free from that self-imposed barrier and then reach your full potential. And I use the metaphor that we should check in with our beliefs to ensure that they're aligned with our goals, values, and vision for our lives, just like we ensure that, our tires are aligned on our car so that we have a smooth ride and get to where we want to go. Now, as Tracy mentioned, some of these types of beliefs, these limiting or negative beliefs about self, can be changed in an instant, right in that instant when that awareness is created and then the choice is made. However, the longer you hold on to any limiting belief, the stronger it will become, and it will take root inside of you, and the harder it will be to break free from it. So here's maybe an example. For those of you who've been following the show, you may recall that I said I had what I call a great childhood. I maybe mentioned that I often had to try out twice to make a team or to achieve a goal, but my belief was not that I wasn't good enough. It was that I had not performed well enough, which then motivated me to learn what I needed to learn or to improve my skill and then go out and try again. Had my belief been that I was not good enough, as in I personally was undeserving for who I am rather than how I performed, then I would have never worked harder and tried again. However, once I did have an emotionally traumatic experience in my 20s, and my self-beliefs became that I wasn't good enough, wasn't enough on some level. My achievements, my relationships, my happiness, my motivations, my everything reflected that belief until I broke free from that, from the mindset, and did the work that was required then to start changing my beliefs. I did what I now offer you, Soul CPR. And that leads us into today's topic of mind body connection. You may remember a couple of weeks ago when my friend Leanne Hayes was on the show to talk about the aftermath of domestic violence. And we touched on health and wellness because when you're in an abusive relationship, you're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode, known as stress response at all times, and your sympathetic nervous system is hyperactive. The brain is sending messages to the body to prepare for danger all the time. And this chronic activation, if you will, negatively impacts health. So this is something she and I both have known and have talked about. And when this nervous system is chronically activated, it's the heart, the lungs, and the digestive tract constantly responding. And it can result in diagnoses that include autoimmune diseases, chronic stress, and I'm sure most of you know that stress is the underlying cause of many, many other diseases, depression, high blood pressure. I think I mentioned a couple of things while I was in chronic stress in my first marriage. I suffered from psoriasis and eczema, a stomach ulcer. I'm not sure if I mentioned irritable bowel syndrome and chronic lower back pain. Now, all of those are now healed. All of those conditions are now history for me because I truly nurtured my mental well being. I healed my mindset, and my physical conditions followed in healing. I wasn't focused on healing my physical conditions, I was focused on healing my thoughts, my mindset, my life, and my body followed. It was, shall we say, an unexpected benefit, a surprise. And part of my personal growth and healing was also that I became interested in self care through exercise. I found that group exercise specifically made me, well, just plain happy. And eventually I became certified in different formats as an instructor. And that led me to engage in continuous education about the body and combine that with my neuro nerd personality that put it all together to better serve my clients. So I recently wrote an article for Your Tango Media about this subject of mind body connection and actually why we sometimes cry after a great workout. And so it's really about explaining the mind body connection and the unconscious healing that can take place. Just like I was explaining in my situation, I wasn't focused on healing the body, it happened in alignment with the mental connection. So the headline my editor gave me was sparked by actually a TikTok that got thousands and thousands of responses. And it was a guy who posted himself crying after running and asking viewers what was wrong with him. And he said something like, would somebody with a degree in the brain tell me what's happening to me? He was just sobbing really after what he described as a great run. And many who replied to him said that it also happens to them. And one, at least one, replied that they avoid going to the gym because they can't control the tears. And several replied that they understood this phenomena, if you will, to be an emotional release. And they mentioned somatic and bilateral movement. So they are right. And there's nothing wrong with him, them, or you if you cry after a great workout. It's a common occurrence that has everything to do with the mind-body connection. So, Dan, I'm going to ask you if we can take our first break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about the specifics of the mind-body connection, how it works, how it triggers that phenomenon of crying, and more about that. So don't go far. We'll be back with more Soul CPR. Well, Dan might not be listening. They might be having to run two shows concurrently here. So I'll keep going until I see Dan is back on with me. So here's the deal with the mind body connection. A lot of people say, what's the mind and the brain? Well, think of the mind as holding our thoughts, our memories, and images of and about our experiences. And these create our emotions. And we can feel our emotions in our bodies, kind of like, when we're excited to see someone we love and we get butterflies in our stomach, or when our cheeks flush red with a warm sensation when shyness comes over us. Like if you're, I don't know, flattered by someone, the feeling, you've had it happen to you. And when we haven't dealt with our difficult or our negative emotional stuff, or some people call it baggage, when we've repressed it and kept it inside, when we've pushed it down, it's believed, though it hasn't been proven scientifically. Now, there's a lot of research going on and body mapping and all of this stuff. It is believed that these emotions, and if you think of the word emotion, energy in motion, there's nowhere for it to go. It's not been expressed. It's been repressed. It's believed it can get trapped in our bodies and become sources of pain and even disease. So guess what? The tear ducts are a great escape route. So crying while exercising can be the result of let's say, a painful past experience that's not been fully healed, even though we've moved on from it. And it's called somatic, which means of the body, release, and the bilateral or alternating rhythmic movement of running, dance, something like Tai Chi or yoga or other forms of exercise can stimulate or trigger it. All right, let me see. Dan, are you back? Oh, he's here. Okay, no worry. We're all good. So we'll take our first break here. And when we come back, we'll continue with more about this phenomenon of crying when exercising. Don't go far. We'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
All right, welcome back to Soul CPR. We are talking about the mind body connection today. And sometimes when we're exercising, we may actually cry because emotions are believed to possibly be trapped in our bodies sometimes when we've pushed them down, haven't dealt with them, even though we've moved on, maybe forgotten about them. You know, I'm thinking of things like maybe you went through heartbreak years ago, maybe decades ago, and you're no longer thinking about the person or the event, but there's some unhealed part of that. Um, or the hurtful words, perhaps, that your mom spoke to you that maybe they're still hanging out in your deep inside your gut, and there's an issue there that you don't correlate to that. There's some pain, there's some stiffness in your hips, and you don't realize that's from never dealing with the, let's say, the junior high bullying event where you stood still, you couldn't step forward to stand up for yourself or run away from it. You froze in that moment. So these are the types of things that researchers say, emotion and where in the body they could be stuck. So those types of things, but you're not aware of it. It's not conscious, but in movement that this can be released. And so it can surprise someone sometimes. So the ancient Greeks, I found this interesting, that the ancient Greeks and Romans recognized crying as a way of purging and purifying us. Kind of like that. And modern day psychologists explain crying as a means literally to release stress and emotional pain because crying releases the feel good hormones, oxytocin, and other endorphins. Now, I know I always feel better after a blubbering cry. Do you? So, exercise of any kind that you aren't thinking about the results, you're not counting reps, you're not noting how much you can lift or how far you can go or what you look like. Some would say, when you're out of ego, you're just in the flow, allowing your body to move, like running, spinning, dancing, Pilates, yoga, Tai Chi, all that I mentioned before, can lead to this unconscious freeing of this entrapped emotion. So if you feel the tears coming out while you're working out, let them flow. It's a sign that your mind and body are working together to help you heal. So don't resist it. It's beautiful. Um, Now, I mentioned I had the great childhood. If you remember, again, from Leanne's story, who did the aftermath of domestic abuse episode with me, she did not have a great childhood. She mentioned that her emotional trauma began then, and it continued throughout her life into her marriage and after divorce as the control continued. And that she's just now really finding the courage to talk openly after his recent passing. And you noticed how difficult it remains to discuss the effects of abuse. And while she's since known a loving relationship, she's endured the grief of that loss as her beloved Jack passed during COVID. There's been much with job changes, managing grief and debt, and a house in disrepair that has kept her in a stress response. Now she's faced each with grace, but there has been a toll on her physically. This kind of lifelong nervous system activation with few periods of reprieve, if you will. And I applaud her for all the work that she's done on her perceptions and mindset, and also now in reverse on her body to help heal her mind. So let's talk about that. There are specific somatic exercises where you consciously focus on a release, and you may or may not cry, laugh, or simply feel the release and therefore the relief. You may even feel joy. So in somatic exercise, now rather than the unconscious thing that like happened to the guy who posted the TikTok and like, what is wrong with me? I'm crying. I feel great, right? in this case, in somatic exercise, you are consciously focusing on the mind-body connection, on the signals your body sends about areas of pain or discomfort or imbalance while you're moving. So it's usually like a stretching type of exercise, like Pilates or yoga, with slow movements where you're paying attention to the internal signals. Again, you're not counting reps or noticing external sources, but you're rather noticing the muscles that are engaged, and you're allowing your body to guide the movement, to remove tension, rather than following a movement to meet a criteria. So oftentimes in somatic exercise, your eyes may be closed to kind of help you stay focused inward. So now you're consciously connecting the mind and the body. So I think one of the big takeaways I want you to understand here is that the mind and body are always communicating. They're always, it's whether you're conscious of it or not. So in this case, and Leanne said I could share this story. I mentioned I'm also a fitness instructor, right? And I invited Leanne at some point to join one of my online Pilates classes in an attempt to start some self-care after Jack's passing. And she logged in one day with her camera off. And at the end of class, everyone turned their cameras on who didn't have them on already to socialize and to chat. And she did not. However, she unmuted long to apologize for not joining in the social chat. And I could tell from the sound of her voice she'd been crying. And checking in with her later, she confided that the crying continued into the day after and that it had actually been more like sobbing. And I was worried that some of the songs may have triggered a memory of her husband. And she said it was not the music, it was something else that she could not explain. She only knew there was a tremendous release. So since that class and that time, she has learned a lot about somatic exercise and about somatic release and healing. And she now practices somatic exercise on her own for conscious mind-body connection. So she engages in movements that she has chosen for herself based on what her body has communicated, if you will. So she has created a yoga-like flow of movements, like, and I don't know her exact flow, but let's say it's something like a flow of cat, cow. If you're familiar with yoga movements, most of them are named for animals, right? So cat, cow, going into something like a down dog. I'm using a flow that I use, a down dog, maybe with high heels, and then alternating dropping the knees, alternating lifting and lowering the heels for something we call walking the dog, coming back into down dog, and then going into walking hands forward into plank, all the while really conscious of the breathing. And then maybe a chaturanga down into upward facing dog, coming back to neutral, into tabletop or quadruped. All of this, she's focused on her breath. She's breathing in positive feelings, even maybe a mantra, and she's exhaling negative ones. She's visualizing all of the positive as white light and the negative as dark smoke. Some things she said it's become prayer like, and she's seeing and she's scanning her body, right? Anywhere there's pain or discomfort, for example, her hips, where she deals with a lot of pain and stiffness, and she'll call in the white light and she'll see the darkness leave as with the exhale. So it's very conscious, and she's again visualizing the light and the darkness with the inhale and the exhale. positivity versus the negativity. She might call in abundance. She might call in gratitude. And she's created these mantras. And she told me that she's noticed relief and improvement, that she's a total shift in her mindset and her body. And again, she's had a lifetime of trauma. And yet this progress is happening, this healing is occurring. She said she's believing in it. And that goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the show. She is planting and seeding new beliefs. And that, my friends, is powerful. Powerful. That is healing out loud. Dan, I think this is a good time for our second break. So don't go far. We'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back, everybody. We are talking about the mind-body connection, about somatic healing or somatic movement. And we mentioned bilateral movement earlier, and that is rhythmic. It engages left brain and right brain, and it engages both sides of the body. And again, when it's unconscious, it just happens automatically, like running is both sides of the body, but the brain is tapping into the emotional side unconsciously. So in bilateral movement or bilateral focus, there are therapies that will engage this consciously. So beyond the exercise, somatic therapies that are designed to use conscious mind-body connection, often to release traumas, include something like EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization, reprocessing. And it's using movement of the eyes from left to right to change how someone experienced a trauma. There's somatic experiencing, gestalt. There are so many. They really are. Just please do your research and find a qualified and certified practitioner if you choose a form. These are all forms of psychotherapy. Okay. There are also holistic techniques for emotional release that are very, very effective. EFT, you may be familiar with, emotional freedom technique known as tapping. I love and I find this very relaxing. It's something you can easily learn and for yourself to do on yourself. Of course, massage, Reiki is a form of emotional or somatic technique, actually. Um, so I guess the question to ask yourself is it easy for you to express your emotions? Are you able to express them as you're feeling them? Think about a child, right? They fall off their bike, they cry right then. Then they get it out, they get up, and they keep going. Or their friend hurts their feelings. They let you know right then they make up and they keep playing. Is it easy for you to express your emotions? Do you hold them in? Do you stuff them down? Have you ever surprised yourself and cried during or after a workout and didn't know why? Dan, you can answer me about you in the chat if you want. I would love to know. But sometimes releasing or expressing emotions does come easily for some of us, right? But for others, expressing feelings is more difficult. And this can be for a variety of reasons. It could be feeling shame. It can be guilt. By the way, Dan has not cried during a workout, so maybe there's no anything stuffed down. But there can be so many different reasons for not being able to express emotions. It could be fear. It could simply be being unaware of them. But when you're feeling emotions, if you're feeling them, just know that the healthiest option is to be able to share them with some trusted friend, some kind of positive self-talk with yourself, to unpack it later if you've realized you didn't deal with it in the moment. But we often experience emotions directly in the body. And think about it, because we use words to describe them all the time. Have you ever said you had cold feet about something? Have you ever said that you felt like you got stabbed in the back by a friend? Have you ever used the word heartbreak for yourself? Have you ever felt like you had a shiver down the spine from something? We said butterflies in the stomach earlier. You ever felt butterflies in your stomach? Have you ever broken out in a cold sweat from the nerves, getting out up to public speak or whatever it may be? What else can you think of that would be a way to describe your emotions as you feel them in your body? Let's just put it this way. Your body's picking up what your mind is putting down, and vice versa. You know what I mean? Yeah. Dan, can you think of any other way to describe how you feel in your body? Send it to me if you do. If any listeners do, put them in the comments. How else do you feel what you're thinking? Our mind and body are always communicating. And speaking of crying, did you know there are different kinds of tears? Well, there are. I didn't know. I really didn't think of it, I guess, before I was researching for the show. But there are, they're the ones that, help us blink out irritants and all to protect our eyes. But there are specifically tears that are known as the emotional tears. And they literally flush out stress hormones and other toxins out of our system. So it's healthy to cry. It's good to cry. So researchers have established that crying releases this oxytocin and these other endorphins, these feel-good chemicals that literally help us ease both physical and emotional pain. So when we cry, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the nervous system which governs our bodies when it's at rest, kicks in and shifts us out of that fight, flight, freeze, and fawn mode. It's known as the rest and digest. I like that a lot better than the stress one, don't you? It's a much better place to hang out. All right. So, mind body connection cannot be denied. I have clients who have spent a lot of our time together working through whatever they've come to me for. And what they believe when they've come in is that whatever their past was, they've left it all behind and they moved on. And what comes out in sessions is that the emotions were just kind of buried deep, sometimes years, sometimes decades. But then they've surfaced. Something's triggered them. Something in a new relationship or a new job or some new circumstance in their lives has triggered and had these resurface, and now they're having to deal with them. So what our work is to then unearth, identify the root, if you will, the source, and then work through it. So whatever's not been dealt with will come up eventually. It will affect, it will impact life until it's been fully dealt with. Again, awareness, choice, but sometimes there's a lot of work in between those two things to get you to where you need to be. All right. So, Dan, let's take our third and final break. And when we come back, we will conclude this episode of Soul CPR.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Welcome back, everyone. I have really enjoyed doing the research for today's show and thinking back on different times where the mind-body connection has been shown up in my life. And I think back to when I was living in Montreal, and I was really excited to have been hired by a popular gym in my community. And my very first class there, I was nervous. I'm talking about, gut-wrenching nervous. There's another term there for those for about the body. Gut-wrenchingly nervous, but it's because I was replacing a very popular instructor. And I went in, Stance Fitness, and I was so relieved when I saw people smiling and enjoying themselves. And I got into it, and had a good time. And then near the end, I saw her. It's a woman on the third row crying. And I just deflated, right? And I made it all about me. I thought, oh my gosh, she hated it. She's, really missing the other instructor. And I wanted to go ask her if she was okay. And I thought, oh, just stay back. And she came to me, and I prepared myself for whatever it was. And she was smiling through her tears. And she apologized for crying. And she said, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why I'm crying. And we both had a laugh. And I felt this tear run down my cheek. Maybe it was a bead of sweat. Let's call it that. I'm not sure, but it was definitely relief. And she said, I just feel so good. And she said, I don't know what that last song was, but I don't know, but something during that last song and she thought maybe it was the music. And the music was beautiful, and it was Indie Aries acoustic. Beautiful was the song. But the combination of the music, and that's another thing that's been proven. And if you think about different rituals in different cultures, and their drummings and chants, and drums are used in sound healing. So I think there was something for her, the combination of having moved her body with this song, and that did that for her. But I didn't know then that this was a release. I learned a lot about it after, of course, putting all of this together. But I'll never forget that day. That was my first experience with someone crying during or after following exercise. I wanted to share that I've attended another wedding this weekend, so I want to give a shout out to that bride and groom, Shivani and Logan, wishing you all the best. What a beautiful event. And I also attended my youngest's graduation from military training in the infantry. So that was a beautiful thing. And I want to just express my pride in all who serve this country, and my specific pride in him. And right during break, Dan and I were laughing because my doorbell rang, which is my biggest fear while I am recording the show, because then my dog barks and then it's just chaos. But it all settled down before we came back from break. But my son is home on a hometown recruiting assignment for 2 weeks before he goes to his base station. But I know you all join me in wishing Manuel all the best in his future in the military, serving this country. So I thank you for that. So as we conclude today's episode of Soul CPR, Healing Out Loud, remember that healing is not a linear journey. It is a process of profound transformation. And I encourage you with this, if this is new for you, to be thinking about the mind-body connection, that you just start with the simple things of just becoming aware. Notice your body, notice your thoughts, notice where you feel them in your body. Notice the emotion. What would you name it? Just name it. And then allow it. Allow it. Allow yourself to feel it. Validate it. If it's anger, it's anger. Don't suppress it. Don't think it's not okay to be angry. It's what you do with your anger that matters, right? Or your sadness. Pay attention to, what is it I'm doing with it? Is it healthy or unhealthy? Maybe going for a run is a good thing, or joining a group fitness class. A way to release it. Moving the body is a way to release it. So pay attention and move towards healing. And if today's stories resonated with you, then please share the podcast with those who might need a lifeline on their own. Subscribe, rate, and leave a review to help us reach more hearts, and connect with me on social media. You'll find me on Facebook at Skyview Coaching, or at Ann Papayoti on Instagram, LinkedIn, and X. Let me know your thoughts, your stories, and the topics that you would like to explore more in future episodes. And thank you, Dan. He's put my QR code and my website up. You can scan the QR code if you're watching, and you'll have a link to the book, The Gift of Shift, there. It's available on Amazon as well. So until next time, may you find strength in your vulnerability and courage in your journey. Thank you for listening. Breathe deeply, love openly, and live soulfully.
This has been Soul CPR with host Ann Papayoti. Breathe life back into your spirit with each episode, where she and special guests explore the relationships that hurt us and discover that healing can only begin with you. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.